Let's talk about the greatest Christmas monster of all time, Krampus. Hey, spooky people, it's your best friend Kenny, and we are back, and it is Christmas season, so we are going to be enjoying Creepy Christmas. Make sure that you are subscribed to this channel. It is The Spooky Lawyer. If there are any spooky or disturbing stories, holiday related or not, feel free to go ahead and send me an email at thespookylawyer@gmail.com. I will go through them and I will I'll research them and I'll make a video about them. Now, without anything further, let's get spooky. Now, what is Krampus, or who is Krampus? Krampus is a mythical creature with roots in Central American folklore, particularly in Austria, Bavaria, Croatia, the Czech Republic, and Slovenia. He is depicted as a horned, anthropomorphic figure with cloven hooves and a long, pointed tongue. And he serves as a counterbalance to the benevolent St. Nicholas. Krampus punishes misbehaved children during the Advent season. Krampus punishes those children with birch rods. And in some folklore, Krampus might even capture those particularly naughty children and take them away to his lair. Krampus is traditionally celebrated on December 5th, the night before the feast of St. Nicholas, known as Krampusnacht or Krampus Night. It was customary for the demon-like creature to roam the streets, visiting homes and businesses. The next day, December 6th, is St. Nicholas Day, where children find out if they have been rewarded for their good behavior or punished for their misdeeds. Now, it's important to know that in Europe, and particularly Central Europe, Christmas is celebrated a little bit differently than it is here. Here in the United States, Santa comes December 24th or the night of Christmas Eve. That's when kids get their presents. They find out if they've been good or not. In mainland Europe, particularly Central Europe, St. Nicholas Day, December 6th, is typically the day that children get their presents. And there's a variety of other, Christmas traditions that go on. But, the night before is Krampus night. And that's when the naughty children get their not presents. They, instead of getting coal from Santa, they get whipped with tree branches and, taken to some creepy monster's lair. Krampus is believed to have pre-Christian origins with potential connections to ancient pagan mythology and rituals within the Alpine regions. The name Krampus is derived from the German word Krampen, meaning claw, which reflects the creature's fearsome appearances. He's got horns, he's got dark hair, he's got fangs, and he has this long pointed tongue, which is sort of his trademark. He resembles various demonic figures from various different cultural mythologies. Some anthropologists associate Krampus with the wild spirits of nature that featured prominently in pagan traditions. There are links to Norse mythology, specifically with figures like Hyld, the goddess of the underworld, suggesting a background in ancient shamanistic traditions. In regions with harsh winter climates, myths often grew around the concepts of death and rebirth. Krampus was part of those solstice rituals, embodying the chaos and harshness of winter months. Now, for all my chaotic people out there, you can appreciate this. Although, I like chaos, but I don't like winter. So maybe I'm not the best example. Some theories suggest that Krampus may have been part of shamanistic practices that celebrate the dark spirits associated with winter. Over time, as these rituals evolved, especially in rural areas, Krampus traditionally took part in parades, often involving revelers donning elaborate masks and costumes. These events, known as Krampuslauf or Krampus Run, have gained popularity and are characterized by participants parading through towns in Krampus costumes, often engaging in banter with spectators. With the spread of Christianity throughout Europe, many pagan traditions were either absorbed or altered to fit within the Christian religious framework. As Christian traditions became more widespread, Krampus was incorporated into the feast of St. Nicholas, which is celebrated on December 6th. It's sort of interesting that it was not enough for these children to just simply not get presents if they were naughty on St. Nicholas Day, but instead they needed to be punished by the Krampus if they were naughty. The duality of Krampus and St. Nicholas was a tool for moral lessons among children, illustrating the concepts of good and bad behavior and their consequences. This was a particular tangible form for this to happen. During the Middle Ages, Krampus began to appear as a more standardized figure across the Alpine regions, accompanying the benevolent St. Nicholas during annual celebrations. Over time, Krampus became an integral part of Christmas traditions. Starting in the 17th century, the figure of Krampus was prominent in regions that are now Austria, Germany, Hungary, Slovenia, and the Czech Republic. During this time, Krampus became a familiar presence in Christmas cards and holiday imagery. Recently, Krampus has experienced a revival beyond its traditional geographic boundaries. The creature's dark nature has captured the imagination of a global audience. Spooky people have decided that Christmas can be spooky, although European Christmas is pretty spooky anyway. And there's a lot of other spooky Christmas myths in European Christmas. But, in various parts of Europe and North America, Krampus-themed events, parades, and festivals have become increasingly popular, often characterized by participants donning elaborate Krampus costumes, kind of like what used to happen, in the earlier times, the Krampusnacht and the Krampus Run. Krampus has also become more and more featured in films, television, and literature, which has also contributed to its rise in our culture. The allure of Krampus is in its ability to embody the dual fears and delights associated with the holiday season and winter. Krampus offers a counter-narrative to the traditionally joyful Christmas celebrations. Krampus also appears to people who enjoy the darker side of holiday celebrations, often as an alternative to the often saccharine aspects of Christmas. And it's actually not far off to enjoy, darker Christmas traditions or creepy Christmas or whatever you want to call it. There are other creepy Christmas traditions also, like the Yule Cat, for example, which is a cat that devours children from Icelandic culture during Christmas. I got a video on Yule Cat coming too, I promise. The Americanized Christmas that we know is very different from what was traditional Christmas, especially in Europe. So Krampus's rise recently is a fascinating example of how folklore and traditions can evolve and be reinterpreted over time. It's kind of like Festivus, right? It's sort of it's sort of in the same vein as Festivus, from those of you who remember Seinfeld. Some people are tired of Santa, tired of the overly commercialized and sanitized image of Christmas that American Christmas has. Krampus is darker, more rebellious, and humorous. Some people like being bad. Some people like the evil things. And so, Krampus is embracing the dark side of our nature. The people who have a fascination with the macabre. From everyone who's interested in things from horror movies to true crime. Krampus fits right into this trend, offering a slightly scary or, offering a scary figure to explore during the holiday season. And Krampus also has a psychological appeal. as a way to acknowledge and embrace the darker aspects of human nature and the things that, people like. It's okay to like darker things. It's okay to like spooky, scary things. That's why this stuff is so popular. The internet and social media have played a huge role on spreading Krampus with memes, images, stories, plenty of videos online. And there are online communities dedicated to Krampus, allowing fans to connect and share information and celebrate this unique tradition. People have started doing their own Krampus runs, where people dress up as Krampus and parade throughout the towns. People have also thrown Krampus parties and festivals. Krampus-themed parties and festivals, events pop up in your area, around the Christmas time is sort of a fun, different way to sort of celebrate the holiday season. Krampus has also started finding his way back into horror movies. There was a movie in 2015 called Krampus, which sort of reintroduced the character to, horror movie people. And since then, there have been a variety of other Krampus movies, such as Krampus the Reckoning, Krampus Unleashed, and Mother Krampus. Personally, I enjoy Krampus. I think that it's great that it's made its way sort of into our cultural landscape. I'm glad that we can celebrate sort of an alternative to Christmas or a more adult-themed Christmas idea and enjoy it and have it as another part of our layers of Christmas traditions. You can love Santa Claus, you can love candy canes, you can love elves and snowmen and all the happy stuff, and you can also love Krampus. I think it's a great way for people who enjoy, darker things to find a way to enjoy the holiday. Go ahead, make sure that you are following me on Blue Sky and TikTok. My username is AKBrews. Also, make sure you're following me on Twitter. My username there is AKBrews. If there is a spooky, disturbing story you would like me to cover, send me an email at thespookylawyer@gmail.com. Thank you for watching my video. I really appreciate your support. It means a lot to me. Go ahead and check out some of the other spooky holiday videos in my spooky holiday playlist. And please make sure that you stay spooky. What says Christmas like a giant cat who eats children who don't get new clothing for Christmas? How about an ogress that punishes children? Let's talk about some of the terrifying creatures that lurk in the Christmas nights. Let's get spooky. Hey everybody, it's your best friend Kenny here, and today we are going to discuss some creatures that are part of Christmas lore that are frankly quite terrifying and disturbing. So let's get down to it. The first, Yule Cat or Yule Cat is part of Icelandic lore. It is a giant, ferocious cat that devours children who don't receive new clothes for Christmas. The Yule Cat is a furry yet chilling addition to Christmas traditions. It is a feline behemoth lurking in the snow with glowing eyes and dark fur. And it's seeking out people who don't get new clothes for Christmas. Yule Cat prowls the countryside. According to the folklore, it is larger than most houses, and it has a ravenous appetite, like most cats. I actually think most cats think that they're Yule Cat, but unlike Santa Claus, who rewards good behavior, the Yule Cat punishes those who don't receive new clothes for Christmas. This tradition probably originated as an incentive for farmers to finish processing wool before the holidays, rewarding workers with new clothes. The Yule Cat is associated with Gryla, who is a child-eating ogress that we will discuss in a little bit. Yule Cat is Gryla's pet, of course, adding to Iceland's rich tradition of terrifying Christmas folklore. The Yule Cat's popularity actually surged in the 20th century thanks to a poem by Johannes Ungutland, and it cemented the cat's place in my Icelandic Christmas traditions. The threat of being eaten by the Yule Cat was used to encourage children to work hard and be obedient. It served as a reminder to finish chores and contribute to the family's well-being. Nowadays, the Yule Cat has become a symbol of the importance of providing for those in need. The tradition of giving new clothes emphasizes the value of charity and helping those less fortunate. You don't want people to get eaten by the Yule Cat, so give them some new clothes. The Yule Cat is featured in many stories, songs, and artwork, and it is a popular motif in Christmas decorations. It's also become a draw for tourists interested in Iceland's unique folklore. People are starting to incorporate the Yule Cat into Christmas events in the United States. And frankly, we need to be doing this. So we need to get better at this. The Yule Cat needs to become part of our traditions in the United States. There have been some modern interpretations of the Yule Cat, portraying it as not necessarily menacing, but playful. Maybe a mischievous cat who enjoys scaring people rather than eating them. Frankly, I'm surprised that in our culture that loves cats as much as it does, that the Yule Cat has not become a more well-known creature. But that's why I'm making this video, is we should all know about the Yule Cat and hopefully spread the lore of the Yule Cat, because really, we all deserve it. Who doesn't love cats? Who doesn't love Christmas? Who doesn't love the idea of a giant cat eating you if you don't get socks and underwear for Christmas? It's also a great way to teach kids. You know, I mean, I was like that when I was a kid too. Like, I was like, oh no, not clothes. I hate clothes. Oh no, socks and underwear. I remember when socks and underwear would have been the absolute worst thing I could have possibly gotten for Christmas. And now if I get socks and underwear for a gift, I'm like, oh, great, that's awesome. I'm set. Really, I think the Yule Cat is a great way to sort of teach people, teach children that getting clothes for Christmas is actually a good thing and a nice thing. And, you can get toys and clothes and get a nice balance. And, you can do it under threat of a giant, monstrous cat. Gryla, the Yule Cat's owner, Gryla, is a monstrous ogress who boils naughty children in her cauldron. Like Yule Cat, Gryla is a figure in Icelandic folklore, a giant ogress who lives in the mountains and comes down during Christmas time to snatch naughty children. She is the Icelandic equivalent of the boogeyman or the Krampus. Gryla's origins predate Christianity in Iceland. She's been a part of Icelandic folklore for centuries, first being mentioned in the 13th century. Early on, she wasn't specifically part of Christmas, but simply the dangers of Icelandic winter and its wilderness. However, as Christianity spread to Iceland, she became part of Christmas. Gryla is depicted as a monstrous ogress with a voracious appetite for children. She's said to have 13 tails, goat horns, and a huge nose. She boils naughty children in a pot to make a stew, her favorite meal. I mean, we like soup, right? Soup's big. Stew. I think stew is better than soup. I don't know, I don't know the people who are really into soup, how they feel about stew, but I kind of feel like that's sort of, if you like soup, you probably like stew. So, we can kind of get that. Gryla lives in a cave in the mountains with her monstrous husband, Lepaluthi. Yeah, I had to Google how to pronounce that because Icelandic spelling and pronunciation is strange. And her loyal, monstrous Yule Cat. Over time, Gryla's legend has evolved, and she's become associated with Christmas and has 13 sons, the Yule Lads. We'll talk about the Yule Lads later. These mischievous lads, each with their own unique personality and prank, visit children in the 13 days leading up to Christmas. As time has gone on, Gryla's role has softened a bit. She's still used to scare children into good behavior, but the emphasis is more on mischief and pranks rather than outright terror. Gryla is still a popular figure in Icelandic Christmas traditions. She is featured in stories, songs, and television shows. And parents use the threat of Gryla to encourage their children to behave during the holiday season. So what's the deal with all of this scary Icelandic stuff? Yule Cat, Gryla. Well, some people believe that Gryla's origins lie in the harsh realities of life in Iceland. The long, dark winters and the dangers of the natural world likely contribute to the creation of this fearsome figure. Some scholars see Gryla as a type of proto-feminist figure. She's a strong, independent woman, and she's not afraid to defy societal norms. Belsnickel. Belsnickel comes from German folklore, and he is a fur-clad, switch-wielding gift-giver who rewards good children and punishes bad ones. Belsnickel comes from the Palatinate region of southwestern Germany, and he is a Christmas gift bringer. His name roughly translates to Nicholas in furs. Belsnickel is typically depicted as a man wearing fur and a mask, and he carries a switch and or a bag of treats. The tradition of Belsnickel is thought to have originated in the Middle Ages, and in those days, Belsnickel was a frightening figure who would visit children on the eve of St. Nicholas Day, or very similar to Krampus, sort of comes from the Krampus tradition. He would ask children if they had been good, and if they had not, he would give them a swat with his switch. However, if they had been good, he would give them treats from his bag. Again, over time, Belsnickel has softened. In many parts of Germany, he is now seen as a benevolent figure who simply gives gifts to children. However, in some parts of the country, he is still a bit of a scary guy. The tradition of Belsnickel was brought to the United States by German immigrants in the 18th century, and it is celebrated in some parts of Pennsylvania and other states with large German populations. In those areas, Belsnickel typically visits children on Christmas Eve. He wears a scary mask and carries a switch, but he also gives out treats to children. Belsnickel is often associated with the companion of St. Nicholas, Knecht Ruprecht, who we will talk about in a little bit. In some parts of Germany, Belsnickel is known as Pelsnickel or Belsnickel. The Belsnickel tradition is similar to a lot of traditions around the world, such as Krampus. You may recall Belsnickel being featured in an episode of The Office. Knecht Ruprecht. Knecht Ruprecht is from German folklore, and he is a sinister servant who accompanies St. Nicholas and carries a bag of ashes to throw in the faces of naughty children. Knecht Ruprecht, whose name translates to servant Rupert or farmhand Rupert, accompanies St. Nicholas during his gift-giving journeys. While St. Nicholas is the benevolent bringer of gifts, Knecht Ruprecht, sinister, the punisher of naughty children. Knecht Ruprecht is rooted in paganism. and his origins, therefore, predate Christianity, likely linked to ancient German traditions surrounding the winter solstice and household spirits. He may have been associated with the wild hunt, a supernatural procession through the winter sky. With the spread of Christianity, Knecht Ruprecht was absorbed into Christian folklore and became Santa's buddy. He and St. Nicholas are kind of a buddy comedy now. He became a figure who helped St. Nicholas distinguish between the good and the bad children. Knecht Ruprecht is typically depicted as a tall, imposing figure with a dark beard and a stern expression. He often wears furs or a long black coat and carries a sack or a bundle of switches. Lots of switches in these stories. People are cutting switches, right? In some iterations, he has demonic features. Knecht Ruprecht's primary role is as a disciplinarian. He punishes naughty children. He gives them coal, sticks, and stones instead of gifts, and will even administer a swat with his switch. In some versions, he carries a chain or a sack to take particularly bad children away. The specifics of Knecht Ruprecht's appearance and actions vary across different regions of Germany. You'll notice that his story is very similar to Pelsnickel or Krampus. And today, Knecht Ruprecht remains a popular figure in German Christmas traditions. He often appears in parades and festivals alongside St. Nicholas, serving as a reminder that good behavior is important, even during the festive season. Knecht Ruprecht is an integral part of German folklore, representing the darker side of Christmas traditions. He serves as a tool for social control, encouraging children to obey their parents and behave properly. He also represents duality of human nature, the contrasting forces of good and evil, light and darkness, kind of like Krampus. It's fascinating that there are so many of these creatures in folklore that are designed to scare people into behaving. And I get it. You know, I get that people want their children to behave. They want people to behave. They want people to be good people. But it's fascinating to me that it's simply not enough to be rewarded for being a good person. You need the other side of it, which is the punishment for being a bad person. And just simply not being rewarded is not enough of a punishment. Simply not getting presents is not enough of a punishment. Perchten. Perchten is a figure in Austrian and German lore. They are masked figures who roam the streets during Christmas, wearing scary masks and ringing noisy bells in order to scare away evil spirits. Perchten are figures from Alpine folklore in Austria and southern Germany. They are associated with the winter solstice and the Christmas season, and are best known for their elaborate costumes and masks and the noisy, boisterous parades in which they appear. The Perchten derive their name from Perchta, a goddess in pre-Christian Alpine paganism. Perchta was associated with winter, the wilderness, and the souls of the dead. She was often depicted as either a beautiful woman in white or a hag with a large single foot. Quite the two options there. She was believed to wander the countryside during the 12 days of Christmas, rewarding the good and punishing the bad. Perchta was also linked to the wild hunt, which, again, is a supernatural procession of spirits and ghostly hunters roaming the winter skies. The Perchten, with their masks and loud bells, are ways to ward off these malevolent forces. The most obvious feature of the Perchten are their intricately carved wooden masks, often depicting animalistic faces with horns, fangs, and grotesque features. These masks are meant to be frightening and represent the wild and untamed aspects of nature. There are two main types of Perchten: Schön Perchten, also known as beautiful Perchten, with attractive masks and costumes, and Schiach Perchten, known as ugly Perchten, with terrifying masks and wild behavior. The Schön Perchten bring good luck and blessings, while the Schickperkten scare away the evil spirits. The Perktenlauf is a winter solstice ritual, a traditional parade that takes place during the Christmas season. Groups of Perkten, dressed in their costumes and masks, roam the streets, making noises with bells, chains, and whips. Ooh. The purpose of the Perktenlauf is to drive away the evil spirits of winter and bring good luck for the coming year. The loud noises and the masks are believed to scare away evil influences. Perkten runs are popular in many alpine regions of Austria and Bavaria, and they are a major tourist attraction and way to preserve the traditional folklore. Again, they're parades of the Perkten. The Perkten tradition remains an important part of alpine culture, and the Perkten festivals and runs attract large crowds and significant tourism during the Christmas season. Perktens are also often associated with Krampus. If you haven't watched my Krampus video, by the way, you should go watch it after you finish watching this video. Again, it's fascinating that in America, we have this sort of sanitized version of Christmas where there aren't very many other than, the threat of getting coal in your stocking. There are very few, if any, scary aspects to Christmas or spooky aspects to Christmas, even though Christmas is still sort of an inherently spooky thing. You'll hear about tales of the ghosts of the Christmas past and stuff like that, but we don't have any actual monsters that we use to sort of threaten children into behaving well during the Christmas season. And I think that sort of tells you that Santa is that powerful and that, you don't when you have like such a benevolent individual such as Santa that wields as much power as he does, he doesn't need these sort of, ne'er-do-well, terrifying associates or other types of monsters in order to punish people. The very idea of Santa not coming or Santa giving coal in a stocking is enough. Make sure you are subscribed to my YouTube channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Make sure that you are following me on Blue Sky and TikTok. My username is AKBruce. Follow me on Twitter. My username is AKBruce. If you have any spooky stories, Christmas related or not, send me an email. My email address is thespookyLawyer@gmail.com. We're going to keep on with more creepy, disturbing, spooky Christmas videos during the Christmas season because that's what you're here for. Thank you for watching my video. I appreciate your support. And as always, stay spooky. It's that time of year. You're probably sitting next to a fire, enjoying a warm beverage, or you probably just got home from Target and you're listening to Taylor Swift's holiday album. You're probably thinking, wow, Christmas is such a wholesome time of the year. Well, I have some more terrifying Christmas creatures for you. Let's get spooky. Hi, everybody. It's your best friend, Kenny, and we have some more terrifying Christmas creatures to talk about. Before we get started, make sure that you are subscribed to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Now, in part one, we talked about Gryla. Gryla has 13 children known as the Yule Lads. The Yule Lads are another part of Icelandic Christian traditions. There are 13 Yule Lads in total, each with a unique name and personality. They live in the mountains with Gryla, as you'll recall, who is a terrifying ogress who eats naughty children. Yule Cat, who's a big cat that eats children who don't get new clothes for Christmas, and their dad. The legend is that the Yule lads come down from the mountains one by one during the 13 nights leading up to Christmas and get into spooky mischief. Each Yule lad has a specific trick that they play. Sheepcoat Clod harasses sheep and tries to drink their milk. Gully Gawk hides in the gullies and steals milk from the cows. Stubby is short and steals food from pans. Spoon Licker goes around licking people's spoons. That's pretty gross. I don't think I'd want some pre-licked spoons. Pot Scraper steals leftovers from pots. The Bowl Licker licks bowls clean. The Door Slammer slams doors at night, keeping people awake. The Skyr Gobbler devours everyone's skyr. Now, skyr is a type of Icelandic yogurt. You've probably seen it at like Whole Foods. The Sausage Swiper steals people's sausages. The Window Peeper peeps into people's windows looking for things to steal. There's also Meat Hook, who uses a hook to steal meat, and the Candle Stealer, who steals candles, particularly from children. The Icelandic tradition goes that children leave a shoe out on their windowsill each night for the 13 nights leading up to Christmas. Well-behaved children get small gifts like candy and toys in their shoe. Naughty children get a rotten potato. Now, the Yule lads were once much more frightening figures and used to scare the children into good behavior. However, over time, the folklore has changed and they've become more mischievous and less menacing. Today, the Yule lads are a beloved part of Icelandic Christmas celebrations. They're featured in children's books, TV shows, and they even have their own museum. Personally, the Sausage Stealer, I think, is my favorite. Little guy running around taking people's sausage. Hans Trapp. Hans Trapp is a figure dressed in rags from France who scares children into behaving. He is a boogeyman who haunts the Christmas season and serves as a stark contrast to Santa Claus. The legend of Hans Trapp is believed to be based on a 15th century knight, Hans van Trotha. This wealthy and powerful lord was known for his cruelty and greed, like our wealthy and powerful lords. He was excommunicated by the Pope for his actions, including damming a river to deprive a nearby town of water. Man, that's some supervillain stuff right there. Over time, the legend of Hans van Trotha morphed into the terrifying Hans Trapp. He's depicted as a wild-looking man with a long beard dressed in rags or dark clothing. He's often associated with the devil and is said to roam the countryside during Christmas time. Hans Trapp preys on disobedient children, snatching them away in his sack to devour him. Some stories even claim he was a cannibal who enjoyed the taste of human flesh. The story of Hans Trapp was likely used by religious authorities to scare children into obedience. He served as a cautionary tale, warning against greed, cruelty, and disobedience. The legend of Hans Trapp has different variations across. In some versions, he's depicted as a scarecrow-like figure while in others he's more of a demonic entity. Today, Hans Trapp is still a popular figure in Alsatian folklore. He's often featured in Christmas parades and festivals, albeit in a less terrifying form. And he serves as a reminder that Christmas can be spooky. Pierre Fouettard. Pierre Fouettard is Santa Claus's dark French companion who whips naughty children. Pierre Fouettard translates into Father Whipper, and he is a menacing figure in French folklore who travels with Saint Nick as Saint Nick gives gifts. Saint Nick rewards the well-behaved children, and Pierre Fouettard is the disciplinarian, dealing out punishments to the naughty ones. The origin story of Pierre Fouettard dates back to the 12th century, and he was a wicked butcher who lured 3 young boys into his inn, unalived them, and planned to serve them as a stew. The soup people are going to have to let me know how we feel about naughty children stew. St. Nicholas discovers the crime, resurrects the boys, and forces the butcher to become his companion as a penance. Pierre Fouettard's role is clear. He is to punish the naughty children. He is depicted as a dark, sinister figure carrying a whip or a bundle of sticks, kind of like a few of the other figures that we've already discussed. The legend of Pierre Fouettard has variations across different regions of France. In some areas, he's known as Roubles or Schmaltzli, and his appearance and methods of punishment vary based on local tradition. Today, Pierre Fouettard is a prominent figure in French Christmas celebrations, particularly in the eastern regions. He appears in parades and festivals alongside Saint Nick as a reminder of the consequences of bad behavior. Some of the more modern portrayals of Pierre Fouettard is he's more of a grumpy old man rather than a truly evil character. Frau Perchta. Frau Perchta is a shape-shifting witch prominent in Austrian and German folklore. She rewards good deeds and punishes bad ones during the 12 days of Christmas. Frau Perchta embodies the duality of winter, bringing both blessings and punishment. And her lore is based and intertwined with ancient pagan beliefs and the harsh realities of the cold winters in the Alps. Her origins likely predate Christianity as a pagan goddess associated with winter, the wilderness, fertility, and the souls of the dead. Perchta is believed to be a powerful figure who oversaw the spinning and weaving, ensuring that households were well ordered and productive. She rewarded those who were diligent and punished those who were lazy or disobedient. She's also associated with the Wild Hunt, a supernatural procession of spirits and ghostly hunters that roam the winter skies. She's believed to lead this procession, dispensing justice and claiming souls. As Christianity spread, her image became more demonized, and she became associated with witchcraft and evil spirits. And she remains a powerful figure in Alpine folklore. La Befana. La Befana is a beloved figure in Italian folklore. She's often called the Christmas witch or the gift bringer. She is an Italian Santa Claus with her own unique twist. She's depicted as a kindly old woman, often with a shawl or a headscarf, and a soot-stained face from climbing down chimneys. Unlike Santa with his reindeer, La Befana travels by broomstick, carrying a sack full of toys and sweets. She visits children throughout Italy on the eve of the Epiphany, leaving gifts for good children and coal or onions for the naughty ones. Honestly, getting an onion is probably worse than getting coal, at least in my opinion. La Befana's origin story involves the three wise men. On their way to visit the baby Jesus, they stopped at La Befana's house to ask for directions. She offered them hospitality but declined their invitation to join them, saying she was too busy to go meet Jesus. Later, La Befana regretted her decision and set out to find Jesus herself, carrying gifts for him and hoping to apologize. However, she never found the baby Jesus, and she continues to search, leaving gifts for children along the way, hoping that one of them might be baby Jesus. Part of the tradition for La Befana is children in Italy hang stockings or socks by the fireplace on Epiphany Eve for her to fill. Families will leave out a small glass of wine and a plate of regional treats for La Befana to enjoy during her visit. She is also associated with sweeping away the old year. Some believe she sweeps the houses she visits, symbolizing a fresh start to the new year. Now, while most of these figures are menacing, La Befana represents hope and generosity even in the face of disappointment. Lucy. Lucy is a figure from Scandinavian folklore who is generally associated with December 13th, which is one of the longest nights of the year, or now December 21st, but it's just Lucy's associated with the longest nights of the year. Lucy has both malevolent and benevolent aspects, depending on the specific tradition. In some traditions, Lucy is depicted as a frightening, terrifying, demonic creature with a monstrous appearance. And she punishes those who haven't finished their Christmas preparation by Lucy night. She's known as a harbinger of chaos. Ooh, I would like to be a harbinger of chaos. And she's associated with supernatural beings that roam the earth on the longest night of the year. In other traditions, Lucy is seen as a benevolent figure who helps prepare the world for Christmas. She's sometimes associated with light and the coming of longer days after the winter solstice. Lucy and Saint Lucia, or Santa Lucia, are frequently linked together. Saint Lucia brings light and hope, is a Christian martyr whose feast day is also celebrated on December 13th and is depicted in white with a crown of candles, whereas Lucy represents the darkness and chaos of the longest night. According to Scandinavian tradition, people should try to finish all of their Christmas preparations before Lucy night to avoid her wrath. It's considered dangerous to be outside on Lucy night due to the supernatural beings roaming the earth. Lucy remains an integral part of the Scandinavian Christmas lore. Kalinkenzari. The Kalinkenzari are mischievous creatures who are part of Greek folklore, who add a bit of darkness to the Christmas season. They are depicted as grotesque goblins or imps with animalistic features like hairy bodies, goat legs, red eyes, and long tails. They live in the underworld, spending most of their year trying to saw down the world tree, which is the tree that holds up the earth. They emerge on Christmas. They surface during the 12 days of Christmas between Christmas Eve and the Epiphany on January 6th. Why? Because according to folklore, during these 12 days, the sun stands still and the veil between the worlds is thin, allowing the Kalankanzari to emerge from the underworld. While they're on the surface, they cause all sorts of trouble. They invade homes. They enter houses through chimneys and wreak havoc, messing things up, spoiling food, knocking over plants and other items, causing general chaos. They terrorize people by playing pranks, scaring them, and trying to ride their backs. They try to extinguish fires in fireplaces, which the fires were meant to protect against them. As part of the lore, people have developed various ways to protect themselves from the Kalankanzari. Keeping a fire burning throughout the 12 days of Christmas is believed to keep them away. Marking the door with a black cross on Christmas Eve is thought to deter them from entering the house. Placing a calendar on the doorstep. The Kalankanzari are said to unable to count past 2, and leaving a calendar on the doorstep will supposedly trap them all night as they try to count the holes. People burn incense because the smell of incense is believed to repel them. The Kalankanzari are chaotic beings, and their aversion to fire and light symbolizes the triumph of good over evil. Their return to the underworld at the Epiphany symbolizes the end of the chaotic period and a return to normalcy. The Kalankanzari are a unique dimension to the Christmas season and certainly a unique piece of lore. Make sure that you are following me on Blue Sky and TikTok. My username is akbrews. Make sure that you are following me on Twitter. My username is akbrews. If there are any other spooky or disturbing stories, Christmassy or otherwise, that you would like me to cover, send me an email. My email address is thespookylawyer@gmail.com. I appreciate you supporting me and watching my videos. Thank you very much. I hope you're enjoying our coverage in Spooky Christmas, and as always, stay spooky. Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol is an inescapable part of the Christmas season. And yet, it's a really weird story. No one seems to ask why. Why is this story such an important part of our Christmas culture? Is it just simply we're trying to act like rich people have hearts? Is this a redemption story that gives us hope to humanize rich people? Well, let's find out. Let's get spooky. Hey, spooky people, it's your best friend Kenny here. And we have another entry in our Creepy Christmas video series. This time we're going to talk about Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, which, I mean, let's be honest, it's a ghost story. It's a ghost story set around Christmas time. So let's get into it. Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol is often billed as a tale of redemption. But really, it's a ghost story. It's a ghost story that shows that this individual, Scrooge, needs to be scared by the threat of paranormal ghosts in order to stop acting like a sociopath. In order to learn empathy, he needs to be terrified. So I don't really think it's that heartwarming of a concept to me. This is a person who, under duress, learned to be a normal human being. And I would argue that that is a major theme of this text. That is a major theme of this story that most people sort of skip past. Scrooge needed to be terrified in order to stop being a terrible person. And the idea that, well, everybody has hope to stop being horrible as long as they're terrified out of their wits by ghosts, really just sort of tells you just how bizarre this character is, the Scrooge character is. Well, it's important to understand the context in which this story was written. The story was written in Victorian-era England, which was a period of social upheaval. And it was marked by interest in supernatural, spiritualism, seances, and ghost stories. The literature of this time has a fascination with the paranormal, which stemmed, people argue, from various factors, including the rise of industrialization, which disrupted traditional social structures and fueled anxieties about the future. Advancements in scientific understanding challenged long-held religious beliefs, creating a space for alternative explanations of the universe and life after death. Charles Dickens had a fascination with the paranormal also. From a young age, he was said to enjoy ghost stories and a fondness for a magazine called The Terrific Register, which was filled with tales of horror and the supernatural. And this exposure manifested itself in his writing. In A Christmas Carol, Dickens uses the supernatural as a vehicle for social commentary and moral instruction. The ghosts that visit Scrooge are not just ghosts. They are for lack of a better term, embodiments. I realize they don't have bodies because they're ghosts, but the embodies of conscience, memory, and social responsibility. And they have a code appearing with distinct characteristics for purposes guiding Scrooge on his journey from terrible human being and sociopath to a person with empathy. The scariest ghost in the story is Jacob Marley's ghost, right? He's transparent. He's carrying a heavy chain. That chain represents the consequences of greed and indifference. And he warns Scrooge of his fate and urges him to change his ways. Then there's the ghost of Christmas past. The ghost of Christmas past is the power of memory and the importance of the past. He takes Scrooge on a journey of his past, reminding him of his lost innocence and joy. He reminds him of who he was before he became the shell of a person. The ghost of Christmas present is a jovial giant with a big torch and a huge feast. He represents generosity, compassion, and the spirit of Christmas. And he shows Scrooge the warmth and joy of human connection, contrasting it with his own self-made isolation. The ghost of Christmas future is a shrouded figure, silent and ominous, represents death and the consequences of a misspent life. And he reveals a bleak future where Scrooge is unmourned and forgotten, prompting him to fear his own mortality. Jacob Marley is Scrooge's deceased business partner, and he sets the stage for the story's exploration of the paranormal. Marley is chained, and his chains are forged by his own greed. And he quite literally warns Scrooge that this is how he'll end up. His form, which is described as transparent, embodies the consequences of a life devoted solely to material wealth. Marley's visit is not only a haunting by a ghost, but it is a haunting of the weight of past deeds and the enduring impact of one's choices on other people. His chains are the manifestation of his bad deeds and the consequences of a life lived without compassion and empathy. The next section of the story devoted to the ghost of Christmas past, is a journey through memory. He's described as a whimsical figure with a cap and a belt and a bright, clear jet of light emanating from his head. And he takes Scrooge on a journey through Scrooge's own memories. This spectral figure represents the power of the past to shape the present, reminding Scrooge of the moments of joy and connection he has forsaken in his pursuit of wealth. He reminds Scrooge of where he came from. The Ghost of Christmas Past's intentions are not merely nostalgic. He is a catalyst for self-reflection and a reminder of how important human connection is. By visiting his past, Scrooge begins to recognize the seeds of his miserly nature and the choices that led him to his present state of isolation. His abandonment of his empathy, that he wasn't born this way, he became this way through greed, through lying, cheating, being a miser, etc. The Ghost of Christmas Present is a celebration of humanity. This ghost reveals to Scrooge the warmth and joy that exists even in the smallest, humblest of homes. Even poor people, even people that don't have a lot when they have family, when they have human connection. And this ghost contrasts it with Scrooge's own isolation and miserliness, and shows Scrooge that even though he has all of these things, without empathy, without human connection, without the generosity of the Christmas spirit, he has nothing. The Ghost of Christmas Future is a glimpse into what happens if Scrooge keeps going down this path. And Scrooge is terrified by the Ghost of Christmas Future's appearance. He's a shrouded figure, and he represents death and oblivion. He shows Scrooge that without empathy, without compassion, he will be forgotten, and his life will have come and gone with no positive impact on the world. He represents a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of kindness. The ghost's silence and presence amplifies the sense of dread and finality, forcing Scrooge to confront the emptiness of his future. Dickens uses these ghosts not only as a guide to Scrooge's transformation, but to also heighten the dramatic effect of the story. And the ghosts introduce a sense of urgency and consequence as part of Scrooge's redemption. A Christmas Carol shows a vision of the afterlife that is intertwined with moral responsibility. Marley's fate, burdened by the chains of his own making, are the cautionary tale. The ghosts themselves are not just ghosts, but they are agents of moral reckoning. And they guide Scrooge towards redemption and hopefully a more fulfilling experience. A more fulfilling life experience. Dickens used ghost experiences as dream sequences in his writing, suggesting that supernatural encounters could be manifestations of a character's own psyche. A Christmas Carol, the ghosts are the embodiments of Scrooge's internal struggles. The ghost of Christmas Past are repressed memories and regrets, forcing him to confront the emotional wounds of his past. The ghost of Christmas Present symbolizes his suppressed capacity for empathy and connection, reminding him of what he's missing out on, the joy he's missing out on, by isolating himself from others. And the ghost of Christmas Future embodies his fear of death and dying unknown, reminding him that he has a legacy and that his legacy is important to him. It's almost like these ghosts are a therapist. You know, if Scrooge would have sought therapy, he probably wouldn't have had this terrifying experience. But maybe it would have taken longer to actually get some work done. Scrooge undergoes a process of psychological transformation. He confronts his inner demons, acknowledges his past mistakes, and rediscovers his capacity for love and compassion. The paranormal serves as the guide, the path for self-awareness and personal growth. The story also serves as a social commentary. The plight of the poor was exemplified by the Cratchit family, juxtaposed with Scrooge's wealth and indifference, which highlights the stark social inequities of Victorian England. The ghosts, in their interventions with Scrooge, are advocating for social change and urging consumers of this story to embrace the spirit of generosity and compassion. They challenge Scrooge's individualistic worldview and force him to recognize his responsibility as a member of society. A Christmas Carol has a profound impact on the cultural beliefs of Christmas traditions. And maybe that's why we read this story so often during Christmas time. Sure, it's a ghost story, but it's a ghost story that uses the paranormal and these ghosts in order to impart a belief in, the Christmas spirit. And what is the Christmas spirit but simply empathy, compassion, charity, taking care of people, togetherness, family, etc. So, sure, it's a weird story and it's a weird experience, and it's weird that this story has been embodied in so much Christmas content that we consume. But it also makes sense whether we're sharing this with, children or ourselves. It serves as a good reminder of, what Christmas is supposed to be. And really, what Christmas is supposed to be is a microcosm of what we are supposed to do, not only during the Christmas time. And what Christmas is supposed to be is a microcosm of how we are supposed to live our lives constantly, not just during the Christmas time, but throughout the year. Go ahead and make sure you're following me on Blue Sky and TikTok. My username is AK Brews. Make sure you are following me on Twitter. My username is akbrews there as well. If there is a spooky story you would like me to cover, send me an email. My email address is thespookylawyer@gmail.com. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure you like it. Make sure you share it. Like I said, make sure you watch this around Christmas time with your family. Make sure they take it home and watch it. Send these links to your family. Send the YouTube link to your family. Say, here you go, watch Kenny. He is so Christmas. I appreciate your support. Thank you for watching my video. And please stay spooky. Today, we have a spooky story about mistletoe. No, not some creepy old guy at the Christmas party who comes up to you with a cheap piece of mistletoe he bought from a drugstore and dangles it over your head while breathing his disgusting breath in your face, expecting a kiss. No, we're going to talk about the mistletoe bride. Let's get spooky. The Mistletoe Bride is a Christmas ghost story that was popularized in Victorian England, which was the spookiest era. Victorian England was very, very spooky. This is the story of a young bride who meets a tragic end on her wedding day, grasping the mistletoe. The story begins with a young bride eager to win a game of hide and seek on her wedding day. She chooses an old oak chest in the attic as her hiding spot. The chest, with its rusty lock and hidden spring, becomes her tomb when it suddenly shuts, sealing her inside. She was adorned with a wreath of mistletoe, and she is lost to the world, her game turning out to be her ending. The earliest known version of this story appeared in print in 1822 as a poem titled Ginevra by Samuel Rogers in his book Italy. Rogers believed the story to be based on real events, though the exact time and place remains uncertain. The poem tells the story of a young bride who, bored with the wedding rituals, seeks a moment of escape. The desire for freedom leads her to the attic, which leads her to the chest, and her ultimate tragic demise. Years later, the bride's remains are discovered. She's still adorned in her wedding attire and found with a sprig of mistletoe beside her, a reminder of the festive season in which she lost her life. The groom, who is distraught by his bride's disappearance, searches for her for decades, not knowing her true fate. The house is eventually sold to a new family, and the new family is who finds the mistletoe bride. The popularity of the story surged in the 1830s with the release of the song The Mistletoe Bow by Thomas Haynes Bailey and Sir Henry Bishop. The song became a Christmas tradition in many English households, and the lyrics vividly described the bride's playful hiding, the frantic search, and the grim discovery years later. Oh, sad was her fate. In sportive jest, she hid from her lord in the old oak chest. It closed with a spring and a dreadful doom. The bride lay clasped in her living tomb. The contrast between the joyous occasion of a wedding and the tragic fate of the bride adds a dramatic layer of irony to the story. The bride, full of life and excitement, becomes a victim of a cruel twist of fate. Her wedding day becomes her death day, and a tragedy. Over time, The Mistletoe Bride story has evolved with different versions and interpretations emerging. While the core narrative remains consistent, the bride hiding in a chest, meeting her tragic fate, details such as the location, the characters' names, and the specific circumstances surrounding the bride's demise often vary. Many areas of England claim the legend occurred there. In Castle Hornick, Cornwall, the version connects the Mistletoe Bride legends to Ainsworth account of Lady Rookwell's death in a sarcophagus. In Exton Hall, Rutland, the decaying hall is associated with the story of Catherine Noel, the owner's daughter, who reportedly hid in a chest during a game of hide-and-seek or a performance of Romeo and Juliet. Marwell Hall in Hampshire includes the ghost of Jane Seymour, Henry VIII's third wife, and the possibility of a secret marriage between them at the hall. It also features other ghostly activity, including phantom footsteps and poltergeist activity. The Bramshill House, Hampshire version involves Anne Cope, the eldest daughter of John Cope, who hid in the chest after proposing a game of hide-and-seek. The story also includes the bride's ghost, a white lady spotted in the fleur-de-lis room, and the overwhelming scent of lily-of-the-valley flowers. The Mistletoe Bride story emerged during a period of burgeoning interest in Gothic literature and folklore in the 19th century. The Victorian era, as I said, is very spooky. They had a fascination with death, the supernatural, and the macabre. The Mistletoe Bride story has themes of love, loss, and tragedy, which resonate with the Victorian era themes of literature, and specifically Gothic literature. The Victorian era also had a tradition of telling ghost stories during the Christmas era. The Mistletoe Bride story has been the subject of literary criticism for decades, if not centuries. Some critics have explored the story's symbolism, noting the connection between the mistletoe, a symbol of love and fertility, and the tragic fate of the bride, highlighting the juxtaposition of life and death and the fragility of happiness. Poet Carol Ann Duffy's poem, The Mistletoe Bride, offers a unique perspective on the legend, focusing on the bride's agency and her escape from societal expectations. The Mistletoe Bride by Carol Ann Duffy is as follows. The December bride who, bored with dancing, skipped from the castle hall to play hide and seek, a white bird flickering into the dark. The groom who searched each room, calling her name, then the bridal guests, flame lit, checking the grounds. The 50 Christmases till a carpenter jimmied an old oak chest, the skeleton with its unstrung pearls, loose emeralds, its rings of diamonds, sapphires, and gold. The running feet, the shouting for others to see what he'd seen. Mistletoe in the loose bones of a hand, like love, patiently green. Carol Ann Duffy's work generally challenges the traditional portrayal of women in history and literature. Here, she challenges the portrayal of the bride as a passive victim and instead suggests a sense of liberation in her disappearance. Duffy's poem ends with the symbolism of green, which I interpret as both representing the enduring nature of life and the magical connections associated with the mistletoe. The ambiguity adds depth to the poem's meaning and invites readers to consider different perspectives on the bride's fate. Duffy's poem also takes a unique narrative perspective by shifting the focus of attention to those seeking the bride rather than the bride herself. This displacement creates a sense of unease and allows for a more dramatic impact when the poem jumps forward 50 years to reveal the bride's fate. There have been other explorations of the Mistletoe Bride story. Jacqueline Simpson's article, The Mistletoe Bride, explores the folklore of love and death associated with the legend, tracing its origins and variations across cultures. More recently, Kate Moss's The Mistletoe Bride and Other Haunting Tales has received considerable attention. Moss has been praised for her ability to weave together historical detail, folklore, and the psychological insight in her reimagining of the Mistletoe Bride legend. It has been lauded for its exploration of the complex emotions associated with haunting and loss. The Mistletoe Bride serves as a tragedy, a ghost story, and a cautionary tale, and it reminds us of the fragility of life and the unexpected turns of fate. It reminds us that there's so much outside of our control, and that life is fleeting and delicate. This is why this story has stood the test of time as a Christmas ghost story. Go ahead and make sure that you are subscribed to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Make sure you are following me on Blue Sky and TikTok. My username is AKBruce. Follow me on Twitter. My username there is AKBruce as well. If there are any spooky stories you would like me to research, send me an email. My email address is thespookylawyer@gmail.com. I appreciate your support. Thank you for watching my video, and please stay spooky. Hey, spooky people, it's your best friend Kenny here. And today we have another spooky Christmas folklore story. This is Gilbert the Highwayman of Kent. Now, first, I know what you're wondering. What is a highwayman? I didn't know either. I had to look it up. A highwayman is basically someone who robs other travelers on the highway. Why it's any different than just calling him a robber or a thief, I don't know. I don't know if this is a higher class of thief, if highwaymen are somehow higher on the totem pole than your typical common thief, but look, it's English stuff, okay? You know how weird they are in England. This Christmas ghost story takes place in Kent, England. According to local lore, Gilbert was a notorious highwayman who terrorized the roads of Kent in the 18th century. His terror came to an abrupt end one Christmas Eve when he attempted to rob a coach carrying a young woman and her father. As the tale goes, the woman recognized Gilbert as the man who had murdered her brother. In a fit of rage and vengeance, she drew a hidden knife and stabbed Gilbert, who passed on the spot. The woman was consumed by the act and the trauma of the encounter and went completely bad the next day. The local folklore says that the spot where Gilbert met his end is now the site of a recurring haunting. Every Christmas Eve, the altercation reenacts. The ghost is once again stabbed in the middle of the highway. The setting of the story is Hawkhurst in Martin, Kent. Although not much is known about Gilbert's life and his crimes remain shrouded in mystery, highwaymen were a genuine threat in 18th century England. These outlaws preyed upon travelers in stagecoaches, creating a climate of fear and uncertainty on the roads. This folk story, with its Christmas Eve setting, adds an element of revenge and a unique twist to your typical Christmas tale. The story of Gilbert the Highwayman is a story of a different time. The concept of these highwaymen, which, we don't really have much of a similar type thing in the United States, but this sort of thing, sort of romanticism for this type of era sort of persists in the UK, allows for a different type of story. Further, despite the joy and levity of the holiday season, it's important to remember that there are ghost stories that go with this season as well. So that even Christmas has its spooky stuff. Alcatraz Island, or the Rock, has been the source of incredible suffering for decades. It should come as no surprise that Alcatraz has its share of ghost stories. However, one of Alcatraz's most famous ghost stories is a Christmas ghost story. Alcatraz Island has long been a source of fascination for paranormal enthusiasts. While the island's reputation as an inescapable prison and the stories of infamous inmates like Al Capone often take center stage, there is a lesser-known tale about a haunted Christmas feast. Alcatraz has a deep history with the supernatural. Even before it became a federal penitentiary in 1934, Native American and indigenous tribes believed the island to be a gathering place for evil spirits. Throughout the prison's operation, there have been reports of unexplained sounds, apparitions, and cold spots. Despite the harshness of prison life at Alcatraz, Christmas offered a brief respite for the inmates. In an attempt to maintain morale, special meals were served and inmates received gift packages containing treats like candy, fruit, and cigarettes. The stark contrast between the grim environment and the effort to provide a semblance of normalcy during the holidays is a testament to the complex nature of life on the Rock. In addition to a full turkey Christmas dinner, the inmates were often treated to a variety of other festive foods. For example, celery soup, vegetable dressing, sweet potatoes, mashed potatoes, asparagus, and desserts like walnut layer cake, chocolate cake, mince pie, and fruitcake. Entertainment was also provided to lift the spirits of the inmates during the holiday season. Historical records indicate that they enjoyed movies, vaudeville shows, and athletic competitions. At some point, on Christmas Day, somewhere between 1934 and 1948, depending on the source you read, Warden James Johnston hosted a party for the prison staff at his residence. As the festivities were underway, something happened. A ghost materialized before the stunned guards. The ghost was described as a man with mutton chop whiskers and a gray suit. The room grew ice cold, and the fire in the stove was inexplicably extinguished. The guards were shaken by the encounter and were too frightened to remain, and the party ended. Now, there's a similar ghost story at a different Christmas Eve party that was also hosted by Warden Johnston. And this time, the ghost was described as wearing a brimmed cap and a gray suit from the Victorian era. The sudden drop in temperature and the extinguished fire also occur in this telling of the story. Now, no one knows who the identity of this Christmas ghost is. And, typically you don't really know the identity of ghosts, right? Ghosts are rarely come around sort of identifying themselves or providing forms of identification, right? Some skeptics believe that this was just a misidentification, that the guards may have mistaken a living person for a ghost, especially in low light. Kind of feel bad for the guy who got mistaken for a ghost, if that's true. Skeptics also say that a sudden cold spot and extinguished fire could be attributed to drafts or malfunctions in the fireplace rather than a supernatural presence. Fine, where's the fun in that? People believe that the spirit was a former inmate or a former guard, which makes, a lot of sense. Considering the harsh reputation of Alcatraz and how difficult life was there and the sheer amount of suffering, if you're the type of person who believes in paranormal activity, Alcatraz would be the great type of spot for this type of paranormal activity to occur. Make sure that you are following me on Blue Sky and TikTok. My username is AKBrews. Make sure that you are following me on Twitter. My username there is AKBrews. If there is a spooky story you would like me to cover, please send me an email at thespookylawyer@gmail.com. I appreciate your support. Thank you for watching my video, and please stay spooky.